Hello and welcome to the Ascension Warrior Roundtable. My name is Susan Herskowitz and I set this group up a couple of weeks ago, although this is my first official post. It's taken me a while. I was dealing with a bit of Saturnian inertia, but I'd like to set my intent for what I'd like to bring to the table, and hopefully others will want to bring information from their landscapes as well. My original feeling around setting up this group was creating a community that was like a think tank, and that where we could share a lot of different intel, thereby increasing our own perspectives. So I'd like to bring to the table, I'd like to introduce the world of quantum astrology, which is the astrology of harmonics and the Uranian system of astrology, to be specific, also referred to as symmetrical astrology. Now, the reason why this is so important at this time is because as we're moving into this new paradigm, this new frequency, and our attunement is opening up, everyone's is, you're hearing about it everywhere, to energetic vibration. Well, this is the one astrology that is the astrology of energetic vibration. It can show resonance, it can show consciousness like no other system. It is truly a three-dimensional system. And I think about it often, as to why it hasn't been more prevalent up to this time, but because and I really think that it has a lot to do with needing to retrain the eye. It's sort of like learning how to use a new instrument, but it can seem like this highly technical system of astrology, which it is. But the thing about the system is that it adds an additional layer of intel in that it offers up mathematical and visual symmetries. And so you get, not only do you get the landscape of planets and signs, but you get the visual resonance between things. So you start to pick up on patterns. And that's really all we can do in the universe, is we're the observers of patterns. And that's, we're the observers of energetic vibration. So I'd like to bring some insight, and we'll be charting a lot of different things. But this video is all about showing you the power of what it is to be able to look at a chart of consciousness, an energetic chart of vibration. I did a video a couple years ago about what is Uranian astrology, and I'd like to show a 2-minute clip because it's really our most advanced and newest astrology to date. And, like there are no coincidences in this world. I think that it came along at a time that was needed, when we're shifting into this new paradigm, and now we're all set up to be able to really get a lot of use out of it. So we're going to take a look at this video, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how we chart consciousness. Alfred Vita was a renowned German astrologer and a member of the Kepler Circle. Now, the Kepler Circle was a group of avant-garde astrologic minds whose main purpose was to clean up and evolve astrology based on the groundwork by Johann Kepler. Now, up until that time, the methods of charting the skies had been fairly crude, going from the advent of the telescope to the pendulum clock. We were still in the early 20th century dealing with a two-dimensional system trying to understand a three-dimensional picture. Now, Vita and his colleague Friedrich Seegren were trying to use the traditional system to calculate and predict Russian artillery barrages during World War I based on precise astrological records that they kept. but they couldn't do it. So Vita creates this whole new system that is geometrically based, as well as based on symmetry between planets. So gone is the two-dimensional static chart, which most astrologers still use today, and in was the movable dial. And with the movable dial, he can now reference any plane or point he would like. And then when he references a point or plane, he can see symmetrical arrangements. That is, things that are equal distance to that point that gives us even more information about the point in question. So all these tools and techniques were really a major breakthrough for the time. Let's go back to the battlefront. So with the dial, Vita and Sigrin were now beginning to accurately time the bombardments with amazing precision. But perhaps the equally important discovery Vita had made was that he started to notice on the dial unoccupied points that were repeatedly being activated when things would happen in the environment. And so after years of proofing, he aptly named these spots Hades and Capito. And these are referred to as trans-Neptunian planets in the Uranian system. The trans-Neptunian planets are actually hypotheticals. Now, the physical bodies have never been discovered, but they are points of energy, and from my own personal experience using them over many years in chart analysis, they do add a tremendous amount of clarity and depth to a chart. And it doesn't matter whether you're looking at a natal chart or a chart of a nation. Okay, so as you can see, the dial is this really dynamic system. What you're looking at is the Uranian 90-degree dial. This is the chart of Donald Trump. And before we get into it, I just want to talk a little bit about what we're looking at, in addition to what was described in the video. The 90-degree dial is the fourth harmonic. So harmonics are based on principles of resonance. Like overtones. So they're energetic vibration. And so when you're dealing with the fourth harmonic, you're dealing with matter made manifest. It's the fourth harmonic is all variations of a square, deals with the square. So it is matter made manifest. It tells us about both our potentials as well as our challenges. It's essentially the soul in the outer world. And whether you are any kind of energetic vibration that you are charting, whether they're bombs or the soul of a person or an event, it all has a picture of consciousness. And so that's what you're looking at. Just another word about the dial and the different types of dials that we can take a look at. So this is the fourth harmonic, and we can also speed up or slow down the resonance of this circle. So by speeding it up, we move into higher vibrations, and each vibration means something very different. So, for instance, we can go to the seventh harmonic, which deals with the septile. And the seventh harmonic is all about, shows pictures and the energetic vibration of the chart in terms of our creative thinking, our original insights, our artistry, our inspiration. So essentially it's the non-concrete. We can slow down the vibration, say to the second harmonic. And what we get is a 180-degree dial. It deals with the opposition. So we're looking at a picture more of polarities, yin and yang, higher and lower. And so you can start to see how we can really play around with these different vibrations. And there's really no other system like it. Okay, so now in looking at Donald Trump's chart, and I'm just going to give you a sort of a couple minute overview. I could talk for hours on this chart, but just to give you the essence so you see the power of this system. The first point we always go to in any chart is the meridian, and the meridian in Uranian astrology is the moment. It represents the actual moment, and it represents the soul. It represents the soul's essence. It's what you'd really like to manifest, regardless of whether it brings attention and recognition from the outside. So it tells us about your soul's path. It tells us about what you've come to this life to achieve. And it tells us the spiritual lessons that will come to you also for your spiritual growth and development. So it really is the point of identity. And it also is such an amazing point. It's a point of consciousness. So, and again, it's the moment that you were born. So Trump was born at 10:54 a.m. If he was born at 10:58 a.m., this meridian would shift an entire degree. So the meridian would be right over here. And so if the meridian's there, then the entire picture shifts. So at 10:54, you could see it aligns. Actually, it makes a semi-square, which is a division of a square, to Mercury. But if you were born at 10:58, we're now moving away from the Mercury. It has less energy. And so it changes and shifts not just the Mercury, but the entire picture. So that is why both birth times are incredibly important, but you can see the importance of the time of birth, the resonance, the meridian. So when we go to the meridian in Trump's chart, and Trump's meridian is in Taurus, so you know immediately that power and status are important, but also with that Taurian meridian, it's going to be important valuation, because that's what's important. Remember, Taurus is Venus ruled. Valuation is incredibly important. It's incredibly important, and typically people associate money with valuation, but the deeper meaning of Taurus is our resources, our goods. And this is a theme that gets repeated over and over again energetically in the patterns in Trump's chart. I mean, he has unique talents and abilities and a real ability to see potential. And I think to a certain degree that he's been blocked or has felt limited in terms of how he's been able to express that. I don't think he's selected the right venues because he was looking for valuation in other areas. But we'll get into the deeper meaning of that in a bit. So immediately we want to make note of this major cross axis in his chart, of which Mercury, as well as this configuration of planets, Uranus, Capito, Apollon, are a part. So anything that is part of his soul is going to also be channeled through those two areas as well. And I think it probably would make sense to most people that Mercury would hold an important place for Trump, because it deals, it's what he channels everything through, which is his thinking and his communication. And the nature of the angle, which is a semi-square between Meridian and Mercury, tells us that there are miscommunications, as we know, and someone who is inherently restless. So on the side here, we have something very interesting, and that is Uranus, Capito, Apollon. And the Uranus on its own, very independent, very self-willed, does what it wants, when it wants, how it wants. It doesn't want to be told what to do. And you can see it's in this symmetrical picture with Meridian Mercury. So his thinking and his communication are always coming into play. The Uranus Apollon on its own, and Apollon and Capito are two of the trans-Neptunian planets. Apollon is very expansive on the mind level, and when it's paired with Uranus, if supported, and I believe it absolutely is in Trump's chart, it can mean someone with incredible vision. And so the Capito also in this structure would tell us that organizations, teamwork, that he likes to work within those types of structures. So you're looking at energy, and you need to see what other midpoints are around it to begin to gauge how that energy is operating higher or lower. So, again, you have to always approach when you're looking at these vibrations with an energetic stance, because you need to see what else is dancing with it, so to speak. Okay, so this next area is very interesting. It's a Mars, Zeus, Kronos midpoint structure around the meridian, and it hooks in symmetrically with this 3-point picture of Neptune and Poseidon. So Mars on its own energizes whatever it touches. It's the sun's fighting arm. Zeus Kronos in a chart indicates someone who is a strong personality and who wants to be an authority figure, who wants to lead for sure. And with the Neptune Poseidon, you're dealing with someone who is not only intuitive in terms of vibrationally, because the Uranus intuition is more detached, it's more holistic, it takes a world view. The Neptunian intuition is, Neptune is all about vibration, and it's sensitive to vibration. So, and the Poseidon here is one of the trans-Neptunian planets. And so this, just even looking at the symbol, it has like 2 half moons, one facing up, one facing down, with a bar in between. And so it is receptive from above and below, and wants to radiate out in the form of wisdom. So the Poseidon is a very interesting part of Trump's chart, and it really makes me, that Poseidon, the fact that it is involved in this 3-point picture, because if it was just the Neptune, a Neptune, and we'll put it on the pointer on Neptune here, Neptune Zeus Kronos can either be someone who leads in some type of Neptunian profession, which can be creative, artistic, or some type of helping situation. And it can also be someone who leads who is highly deceptive. And this can be either malevolent or benevolent, or a bit of both. It could tell us about someone who's deceitful and cunning, or even a big-time criminal. And in a non-malevolent way, it can be someone who just gives the impression that is very different than they really are, and who does it big time. And I think that Trump is all sides of this equation. I remember hearing about people who have known him in the past who say, like, I don't know this person anymore. What he's presenting is not the Donald Trump that I know. So I think that we're dealing with this hall of mirrors, and you have to remember that it all gets funneled through that Mercury and that Uranus Apollon, which means that creative imagination is operative all of the time. And the Poseidon part of this equation makes this even more intricate and complex. Let's go to the Poseidon. And what immediately emerges is one of the most powerful structures in his chart, because we have a 4-point picture that involves the meridian, which is a highly sensitive, individualized point. It's his soul. So right off, you've got Mercury, Neptune with the Poseidon. And it is someone who is endlessly searching into ideas intuitively. I was thinking about this, and I was also thinking about, I'm sure that all of his trips to the golf course are actually probably pretty productive, because it gives him time to just be. And because that's really where his gifts lie, is to understand the most subtle energies, the most subtle correlations. He understands and is tapped into what is abstract, what is obscene, unseen. That is his gift. And so it's really important to note that the energy of Poseidon on the whole really doesn't have so much of a negative side to it, because it wants to radiate wisdom. It wants to radiate an inner knowing. It wants to shine the light on something. And as a matter of fact, you'll find a lot of people who are in the advertising business have a strong Poseidon in their charts. And this is where it becomes such a crazy hologram, because if one is radiating wisdom from their own wounding and from the wounding of the collective unconscious, then we can transmit false doctrine or world concept. And in this way, we can see how Trump is a vessel. He's a channel, and he's illuminating what is already there. So this also shows how he is of service to the collective. So this next area really brings to light where Trump is so wounded, particularly around self-identity and his self-valuation. And that is the sun with this close Venus-Hades square. So the sun-Venus on its own around the meridian can indicate someone who is very charismatic. With this Hades issue, and Hades is a very, very dark energy. It's a very primal energy. Whatever it touches and comes in contact with in the chart, it tends to drag into the underworld. But Hades and any of the planetary energies, they're not just one way. They're energies, and so there's a spectrum. And in terms of the career, a positive manifestation of Hades would deal with someone who works with dark matter. It can be anything from a mortician to a funeral director. A lot of people who are in the medical profession have strong Hades. Doctors, nurses, people, a lot of therapists have strong Hades because they're working with people who need their help in some way. And Hades also deals with the antiquities and the esoterics. So certainly astrology is one of those professions, those very old professions, but it's very Hades. And it also works in terms of working with people and healing. So I have a very strong Hades in my chart. So you can see how it can work very multidimensionally, even if it's not healed. But if one works to heal it, it can really work very positively. And so in Trump's chart, we get this picture of this deep wounding, and we have to say, okay, well, where's this wounding coming from? And I went ahead, and if you look over here, immediately I put in the moon ascendant midpoint structure, because this is really important in the whole scheme of things. Moon ascendant in the early life represents the mother. Let's go to that midpoint structure, and you can see it is exactly midway between Venus and Hades. So you know right off the bat that he experienced a lot of rejection with his mother. And if you go back to the traditional chart, the moon square to Uranus would tell you something similar, that, you know, she basically cut out on him. I would imagine that if you think of Trump's energy, just in general, I would imagine he would have been some kind of baby. That would have been very interesting to observe. But so you see that equation, and then we can go over to the moon, because the moon also represents the mother. It represents the emotional unconscious and the habits and the patterns that were formed in the early life with the mother. And right away, you can see this very strong structure of meridian admetos around the moon. So he is distant. I think he experienced so much rejection, he sort of distanced himself from the whole emotional area. Doesn't want to deal with it, doesn't want to go there. And so that is a very interesting picture of that is coming to light. Also, and I want to pull this midpoint structure up. If we go to the Sun Chronos area, because I know there's so much written about his father and his impact, and the impact on Trump's life. But, you know, midpoints don't lie, and so you can see very, very early on that there was difficulty with the mother. But even with the father, this whole Venus-Hades situation plays in again, but with Admetos. So you get a Hades-Admetos configuration around the father. And so this would also tell me that there was something. Hades-Admetos is a very karmic midpoint. It represents karma, and it represents sort of real kind of scant circumstances. You know, I don't think that he got a lot of praise from his father either. But in any case, while the Sun Chronos represents the father in the early life, as he gets older, it's his chart, so it represents him. And so that would also say that there's something karmic in terms of valuation. There's something karmic that he needs to bring forth. And this whole area around the Hades-Admetos, which is the karma, makes a cross aspect to the world axis, which is the Aries axis. And so that would also inform that it is a collective, that it is seen in the world and mirrored in the world. So there's one last midpoint structure around the meridian that I want to highlight, and I think it's important because it really pulls the whole chart together in terms of his soul path, and that is this Aries-Admetos midpoint structure. And it's around the meridian, but don't forget, it's also hooking into Mercury as well as this area on the side, Uranus, Capito, Apollon. So the Aries-Admetos is one of two things. It can either be very focused energy, very deep energy, someone who is very persevering in his ability to manifest in the world, but it can also be feelings of restrictedness and feelings of disconnection. And so you can get from the chart in many different ways that there are these feelings of disconnection that definitely revolve around using his gifts, his capacity, his capabilities in a more profound way. And in fact, when we go to the Admetos point to give us more information on what's really going on, because whatever Admetos touches, it tends to deepen the energy, or it can block the energy and create inertia. But here we see that it pulls in this whole midpoint structure around the Zeus Chronos and this other visionary area around Uranus, Capito, Apollon. So this is someone who definitely can lead in his vision in a very deep way. And it's interesting because Admetos also deals with, when you see it at the head of a whole midpoint tree as it is here, it also can mean someone who is specialized. It means specialized work, that their gifts, their talents, their abilities are very particular. And I think that's what you're dealing with here. I think that in his life he has felt that it's sort of, he never could quite feel like it was enough, which is also mirrored by his issues around valuation. He never felt like enough. But it's also one of the lessons in his soul path to really specialize his work, to find, and I think this is really the first job. He's used his abilities before to tap in to what the collective unconscious, wanted in terms of his entertainment style. But really, this is the first time he's using his talents on a massive collective level in terms of illuminating darkness and using his abilities to tap into all that needs to be uprooted. So it's a very interesting midpoint structure from that perspective. And also when we hook into the Aries axis, which is the world axis, we see this need to use his strong voice, his thinking ability, his intuitions. But also we have Poseidon, Neptune with the sun. So you see it up here, Neptune, Poseidon with the sun. So there is this illumination of world concept. Positive or negative, however you look at it, there is an illumination there. He wants to shine the light on something. Now, on the whole, we do have 2 personal points in this midpoint structure. So it is important. But what's really fascinating is that when we go to this major cross axis, what appears is that this whole structure also sits on some really, really sensitive points. Meridian moon, which are his soul's deepest yearnings. Meridian Vulcanus, his power and might out in the world. And Meridian Node. I mean, there is definitely something that is pulling him along this spiritual trajectory. Meridian Node deals with connections and our spiritual connections. I'd like to leave you with one last image, and that is of the Trickster, because I really feel that it is so representative of Trump's consciousness. Most people understand the Trickster as just this chaotic, amoral, mischievous image that turns things upside down, brings chaos and disorder wherever they go. But the Trickster is very tapped into the collective. They are there to break convention, to break taboo, to break status quo. Their consciousness is fertile and emergent. And they don't always do it in a nice way, but they delight in doing it. And the deeper meaning of the Trickster, though, is that he is eventually captured. He's pinned down, he's tortured, and it's through that experience that he grows and then pledges himself to use his talents and abilities in the service of others. So I think that we're already seeing that. Like him or not, he is a manifestation of the collective unconscious. And so, and how we get there in the end will be a very interesting show. So there you have it, a glimpse into consciousness through the Uranian system of astrology. And I look forward to any suggestions of anything else that anyone would like to chart.